Hello and welcome to a very hot and very sunny London. It's brilliant. Went for a long cycle ride yesterday. Would love to be out there again today. Today in N=33 of these videos about Mvvmcross, I thought I would try and demonstrate some animated text changes. So just trying to do some smaller things for once. So if we dive into, you don't need to see the Twitter account. If we dive into Visual Studio, and what I'd quite like to do is just start as normal, a portable class library project. And this is all going to be about text changes to start with. So textchange.core is what I'm calling it. And we'll kick into that as ever. This dialog will change in the future, by the way, because one of the things that Microsoft have done is they've dropped support for Windows Phone 7.5. So in the future we'll be moving to Windows Phone 8, and we'll have to move to Profile 104, where everything you've seen has been built, to Profile 78. And that's just life in Windows Phone 7. Sorry, I know it's still 50% of the market, but it's going. Enough. So we're going to create textchange.core, and in textchange.core I'm going to do the normal trick of adding NuGet packages, and I'll just do it locally. So I'll add Mvvmcross in. And then in our view model that gets created, let's just dive in and let's do some interesting changes. So let us start by, we'll just get rid of the standard first view model, and let's put in its place a int property. And so this is going to be called counter. That should work quite nicely. And then also let's, in the constructor for this view model, CTOR, let's in the constructor create a timer which we will use to increment that. So we will create underscore timer equals new system.threading dot timer. Oops, timer. And I think that takes, so it takes the callback on tick, the state. We don't want to really give it any hint, and we will do it every 1000 milliseconds. Okay, so that will allow us to create our method on tick, and then the timer, let's create it as a field. Let's put that at the top just because that's the way I'm used to seeing them. So, you know, there's nothing particularly magical there. I hope everyone can understand what that is. And in the timer itself, all we will do is we'll do counter. Can I just do counter plus plus? Yeah, counter plus plus. So that is our view model. Let's just see if that works. Build. Seems to build. So now let's add a UI to it. And we will start with a Android UI. Just for the fun of it. And so we'll have Android and stick with 2.3 for now. And so what does that call the project here? Text change. So we'll call this one text change.droid. Go off and do its thing. No doubt it will whine that I haven't got the latest version installed. We will then manage the NuGet packages. Add in Mvvmcross. Done. We'll delete the old activity. We don't need that anymore. And in the view for this activity, in its resources, let's go in, and we obviously just want to have a big counter and nothing else in our view. So let's just do that. We'll set this to a big size, like 80, so everybody can see it. And hopefully we can run this up. And somewhere I have an Android emulator. Oh, no, I haven't added a reference to the core. So I'm going to run it up. Add the reference to the core project. And then we should better run this up. So let's do that. And what we should see, obviously, is the counter ticking over once a second. So there it goes, and you can see it's ticking along quite nicely, but it's just a bit abrupt in the way it changes. It's not like a very smooth effect. So what we'd like to do is apply some smoothing to it. So let's try and do that. And let me also, it wasn't quite big enough for my wishes, so I'm going to change it to 120. I think there's an Android text color or something to make it a stronger white. Text color equals hash bright white. Okay, so let me just run that up just to check that I've got the effect I really wanted. Shouldn't take a moment. Okay, so now it's much more abrupt, and you can see even hopefully on the video how, you know, it's changing. That's exactly what we want, but it's a bit abrupt in the way it changes. So we'd like to have a nicer effect. So to do that, let's add in a control. And so we'll add a controls folder. And what we'll do is we'll add in a new class. And you could inherit from Android View if you wanted here, but really we don't need to. No, I'm not going to. Let's just do our own class. It'll be easier. And let's call this the Animating text view, because that's what it's going to be. Animating text view. And this we want to make public, obviously. And we'd like to inherit from the Android text view, like that. As soon as we've done that, it tells us we need to have some constructors, so we'll let it generate the constructors for us. We don't really need all of these, but I'll just generate them. There's no harm in having them. And what we'd like to do, in fact, the only one we really, I think, going to use is this one here. But you know, there's no harm in having the others. And what we'd like to do now is we'd like to add a property to this. So let's just add a prop. And this prop is going to be a string. And it is going to be the animating text. You might want to call it something else. It's fine. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to implement this one using our base class text. So we can return the base.text. But when we set it, this is where we'd like to have the animation effect. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up an animation for this guy. And oh, this is missing semicolon, that's what it's complaining about. And so when we set it, what I'd like to do is I would like to have it shift smoothly out of, fade smoothly out of view, then change the text value, and then fade back into view again. So I think I can do this using an animating set. So let me just try this. So what I need to do is just find the animating set. Let me just get this 1 second. What I need to do is, I think it's that I need a new animation set. Okay, it was just not in the current namespace. And the animation set, we'd like to have that as, yeah, let's share the insert later. That's fine by me. What I'd like to do is then I'd like to add an alpha animation to that. So var animation fade out is what we're going to do first. Equals new. And it's an alpha animation. There are various other ways of doing this, but I'm going to do this using kind of the very old Android 1 technique. So this takes floats like this. If you want to know more about other ways of doing animations, take a look at I think he's called Jeremy Laval. He does brilliant videos, and his blog is very useful as well, so take a look at that. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to hook into the animation end method on the animation fade out, and so when that gets called, what I'd like to do is I would like to change base.text equal to value, and then I would like to do an animation fade in. So var equals new alpha animation, and this is going to be back from 0.0f to 1.0f, and I don't need to hook into that at all. So actually I'm not sure I do need my set. I think all I need to do is to set some durations on this. Duration, there it was. And duration is a long, so let's just make that 200, which hopefully is 200 milliseconds. If not, this could be a very long one. And animation fade in, I'll make that one to be 200 milliseconds as well. And then I just need to start this. So I think I can do that using this dot animation equals animation fade in. And here I can do this dot animation equals animation fade out. So apologies that I didn't really prepare that as well as I should have back into N+1, but I think that should work. That seems to be the right sort of thing. So we're going to have an alpha animation that's going to go from 1 to 0. It's going to take 200 milliseconds. When it ends, we are going to apply a different animation, which is going to do text. It's going to set the text first, then apply an animation to fade it back in. So that should work. Let me just build that to prove it. Okay, so that's that. Now let's also, in the setup, just add in our space. So if we override, one of the things down here is the namespaces. So let's see with it. So this is the view namespaces. And so what we'll do is var to return equals the base view namespaces, and to that we will add, and it is text change, oops, text change dot droid dot controls, and that should give us our namespace there, and then we'll just return to return. So with that done, we should now be able to use an Android animating text view in our UI. So let's just do that, and so what we'll do is underneath this existing one, we will add an animating text view, and again we'll bind its text, but actually what we want to bind this time is this animated text to the counter. So if we now try and run this up, then hopefully it'll work. It may require a couple of tweaks. So it's definitely compiled and is now packaging. Okay, so that didn't quite work the way we'd hoped. We don't see the second one at all. And it's saying it doesn't know about animated text. Did I call it animating text? So that's just a simple typo. Let's try again. So now you can hopefully see, although it may depend a bit on your screen, that you can see that we fade out the bottom one and fade it back in again, and you know, it's a nicer effect arguably on the eye than having the abrupt change of the tick above, and that's what you can do to do an animation. So that's that in Android. Let's try and do the same thing in iOS. So let's add a text view again. Let's add a new project. This project is going to be iOS, iPhone only at this stage, and we will call it, what do they call the project again? TextChange.iOS, or TextChange.touch. And in this we will obviously manage the NuGet packages to add in Mvvmcross. In they go. And we will add a reference to the core project. That's done. And with that done, we should now also be able to just make this one change where we copy in the app delegate so that it runs. And we should be able to, in our first view, let's not worry about having a text field, but let's have a large label. And so we'll make it 80 high, and we'll set label.font equals UI, is it UI font? Dot from dot system font of size, and we'll make this quite a large size, so 56F. Okay, so that's our UI set up for the font, and the only thing is we want to bind that to the counter. So hopefully we should better run this. This possibly is going to be a worse demo because it's going to be over the VNC as well. But let me set this as a startup project, change this to iPhone Simulator. See if I can connect. Well, let's give it a go, see if I can connect by running. Doesn't seem to want to let me connect. Okay, it's saying it's no valid connection. Let me just try and fix this. One moment, I'm going to pause recording. Right, sorry about that. I had to turn it off and on again now. Hopefully I can actually connect to it. So with that done, let me also obviously go across using my VNC viewer, and I need to connect to my local. And hopefully it's going to come in. And I can see it's already coming up there, so I just need to get in. So here is the simulator running, and hopefully it's going to start up without any worries. It's certainly taking its time at the moment. And indeed it doesn't look like it's starting, so let me give it one more go. Okay, so let's see if it can deploy again. Okay, so it's off doing things. Right, so here is our UI, and again it's quite abrupt in the way it changes that text. Hopefully you can see across this network. So let's try the same sort of trick, and so what we'll do is we will create, let's just do it here locally. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a public class, and this is going to be a animating, animating, and this is a label, and I'll inherit from UI label, and this I will need to have a constructor because the way I'm constructing it is using a rectangle F. If you want to use this in other situations, then you probably want to add the other constructors, particularly the int pointer one and the default one, but for now this is fine. And again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to, no, I don't need another constructor. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add a property for the animating label. So let's just do that, and this is going to be a type string. And what I'd like in this is I would like to have animating text as the property name. And so we should now, as you can see, be able to return base.text from the base class for the value. But when the value changes, what we'd like to do is we would like to do an animation. So to do that in iOS, we do a UI view .animate block, and we will make this one last. So this is, I think, is in seconds this time. So this one we will make last 0.25 seconds. And what we'd like to do is we would like to have an action for the animation. So this is going to be please set my alpha equal to 0 during that animation. And obviously you could do other things here, like you could have, you could do the easing curve on it or something like that. But what I then would like to do is at the end of the animation, I would like to change my text. So this is where I do text equals value. and then I would like to kick off another animation, so UI view.animate, and in this animation again I'll take 0.25, and what I'd like to do in this animation is to actually animate back in, so alpha equals 1.0 F and a semicolon. So that is my animation to come back in, and so what I should, as long as I haven't made a mistake again, be able to do is I should here be able to add another label. So let's just do that. So a second label is going to be here, going to be an animating label. This is going to be label 2. The only thing we need to make slightly different is where it's positioned in the screen. So that's going to be make it at 90. So it would be beneath the other one. And then I'll bind this label as well. And rather than binding its text, because if I bind its text it won't change the animation, it won't do the animation. So what I'll do is I'll add a 4, and this is for labels, l.animating text. And then when we run this up, hopefully we'll get the animation. So let's see what happens over on our iOS box, on our simulator. Slowly kicking in. So here you can see again, it depends whether or not you've got your how the video encoding and the network is doing, but hopefully you can see how this changes with a nice animation, and it is quite a nice effect here, at least on the real screen. It's not quite so nice on the VNC viewer, and it's a bit less abrupt. So if you do want to animate a change, you don't have to do it using fade in, fade out. You could slide it across the screen or something like that, and obviously you wouldn't normally be changing something once a second either, but you can see how you can do that using animation. Okay, so I guess we should also do this on a Windows platform as well. Always a little bit more fun. So let's try doing this on Windows Phone, say. So let's add a new project, Windows Phone, and what we'll call this one is text change.phone. It's okay. We're going to go for Windows Phone 7 so I can run it on my simulator. References. Add a reference to the core. And then we'll add in Mvvmcross. We know that I want to run this on Windows Phone 7, so I'm just going to change the emulator. And then the remaining steps are all in this to-do folder. There are a couple of setup changes to make in the app.xaml.cs, so let's just do those. The first one is just change this application launching, and the second one is just to run this setup. Let's just do that. And do that again. Okay, so at this stage we should be able to actually run up a UI, so let's just change the first view XAML, and in this first view XAML we're going to make just one big text block. It's going to have counter as its binding target, and we'll just make the font size quite large, so we'll make the font size to 60. So actually let me make it a little bit smaller so that it fits in eventually. 48. So we should be able to run this guy up and we will hopefully see it ticking along quite nicely. So let's just do that. Debug start new. My emulator is here. And we'll hopefully get this. So I didn't pick up my font size very well. So there it is ticking away. And you can see it's quite an abrupt change. As it changes. So I wonder why that didn't change font size, don't know. But hopefully we'll work that one out. So what we'd like to do again is we would like to animate its change. You could do this if you wanted using some sort of fancy XAML technique, but I don't know how to do most of those. So what I'm going to do instead is I am going to create my own control that will do this for me. So what I'll do is I will add a new folder, called controls. In this folder I'll add a new user control. So this is going to be a Windows Phone user control, and I'm going to call it Animating Text Control. And so what I'll do is inside this Animating Text Control, I'm just going to add a text block, and I'm going to give it a name. You can do this lots of other ways, but this is the way I'm going to do it. I'm going to give it a name, which is going to be called Fred. And obviously, yeah, you know, I'll call this the text block. And I will give it that font size, although it didn't seem to be picking it up, so maybe there was a styling or something else I had to do. 48. And then what I should be able to do is you don't even have to use dependency properties for this. You can just use normal properties. So what I'm going to do is in my user control, I'm going to just add a property here, which is going to be public string. Actually, no, you probably do have to use dependency properties, don't you? Such a pain to be using dependency properties. Is there a shortcut for that? A dependency property. So here we go. This is going to be the animating text property. It's going to be a type of string. And is that it? It's animating text control. That's cool. And the only thing this doesn't do for me, this template, is it doesn't do what happens when I get my callback. So let's do this on text changed. So let's create that method on text changed. And now what I get is I'm going to have a var control equals d as animating text control. And what I do is e hopefully has got the new value in there, so that's what I need. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually apply my animation. Phew. So this is my var new text equals e.value, and that's a string. So what we should get here is we should be able to actually animate the control. So what I'm going to do is a var animation equals new. Okay, it's not going to give me it to me. Keyframe animation. Right, so I can have a double animation, that'll do me. And are there any parameters I can put in there? No. Okay, I'm going to have to just turn that off, sorry Steve. And what I'll do is the animation goes from 1, animation goes to 0. And what I'd then like to do is actually have an animation dot ended completed plus equals. So when this animation completes, what I'd like to do is actually set the value. So at this point I can do and this is going to be the. So is it okay, so this is a static method, so there isn't a the at the moment, so it's control dot the text block dot text equals new text. So we're going to set it there, and then what I'd like to do is I would like to kick off a new animation. So this is going to be var fade in animation equals new, and this is going to be a double animation again. And so fade in animation again, what we'd like to do is do a from equals 0.0d, don't need the d, fade in animation dot 2 equals 1.0. Let's add a duration to this again, dot duration equals, and what is a duration? Is it a time span? Equals new duration, and that takes a time span. time span dot from milliseconds, and we'll make that 200. So I need to do the same up here if there are other animation. There's nothing we want to do on the completion of this, so we should instead be able now to actually start applying these things. So animation dot, oh, I know what you have to do is a storyboard, I remember. Var storyboard equals new storyboard. Storyboard dot no, I'm still not there. So I have to add that to the animation, and then I can do storyboard.begin, but I still haven't yet told it to do what I'd really like. So I'm going to have to create a storyboard 2 here, storyboard 2, but there's still a step I'm missing, and that step is that I'd like to do the animation. So I think it's something like storyboard dot set target, and so for this animation what I'd like to do is set its target to the no, I'm still not quite there. We would like to set its target to the control, but we still haven't told it which path to do. So it's something like, let me just check one moment. So it's something like storyboard dot set target property, and again it's the animation comma, and this is going to be the so this is the property path, and I think you can do this as a new property path to which you pass in. Now I'm struggling. It's something like, so hang on, let me just check. This control has the control dot the text block dot alpha, no, dot opacity. So opacity is what we're looking for. Let's just see if we can just use that as a string. Opacity. Right, so if that's correct, we can use the same thing here. I'm not sure it is, but we'll find out. The main thing is that you can look these things up. You don't have to be quite as stubborn as I'm being here. So let's just take fade in animation, make sure it's in this inner one. Right, so we've got this guy now, hopefully, and let's just check it builds. I haven't made any compiler level mistakes. And then let's go to our first view, and what I'd like to use is underneath this text block I'm going to add another one, which is going to be an animating text control. Pull that in, and we know from the code we just wrote this has got a property on it which is going to be called animating text. So we can bind on this one animating text, and we can bind it to the same guy. Right, so those are our two text blocks. Should we see whether that runs? I may have messed up that animation. It's not something I do very often. Right, so I didn't mess it up, and hopefully you can see there that we have the same animating effect. Whether you think it's pretty or not is a totally different discussion, but hopefully you can see that as it ticks along it does change it slightly less abruptly than it would have done as just a simple tick. So I hope that's at least a reasonable first walkthrough. We've got that running in Windows Phone. We've got it running as well in Android. And we should also have it running quite neatly in iOS. So if I just pull this over to here, oops, if I pull this over to here, I should be able to run this there. Somewhere I've got this text. got it changing there, and it should still hopefully be running here. So hopefully you can see now that we've got all three of those ticking along, and all three are applying animations during that tick. So, you know, whether or not you like the effect, it's pretty easy to apply. You could also, if you didn't want to override the control, I think you could also do this via a custom binding. But for now, I'm just going to leave it at that level where we've done it using an inherited control. If there was something else you wanted to animate, then obviously you could also do that. You've seen the technique now. And obviously, as well as doing it on these 3 mobile platforms, you could do it on Windows 8 or on WPF if you wanted to. Okay, that's it from me on this one. I hope that was reasonable. Sorry about a few memory lapses in how to do things along the way. But that's N=33 with lots of things ticking on the screen. Cool. I hope that's helpful.